Hello and welcome to Keep Right On, a Birmingham City podcast brought to you from us here at Birmingham Live. I'm Brian Dick. It's the morning after the night before of Blues' 3-1 win over Wrexham, and I'm joined by Alex Dicken, or as we now call him, Alex, when, not if, Blues go up. Dicken. Alex, how are you doing and how was your evening?
I'm good, thank you, Brian. As you can imagine, it was a great evening. I'm a little bit tired because I stayed up into the early hours filing all sorts of copy because there were quite interesting interviews before and post-match. But yeah, really good and felt rewarding to be reported on probably the best Blues performance of the season.
Yeah, it's one of those evenings where it's just impossible to switch off. I mean, especially for you when you've got about a million words to write. But, you know, even for someone who's just watched it on TV, it was, you know, you just went to bed pumped, didn't you, basically? It was a fantastic evening for Blues. Just interesting to point out before we kick off, we've got loads of comments and takes from everybody, which we'll come to. A few discussion points that Alex and I want to get to. Alex spoke with Tom Wagner and Tom Brady before the game yesterday, and Tom Wagner revealed himself to be, can we call him an avid listener? I don't think we can quite call him a listener. All right, okay, I'll insert avid and hopefully we can slide it by his people. And the Keep Right On podcast also got name dropped by Sky Sports as well. I knew I should have copyrighted calling it the Hollywood Bowl. But there we go. It's nice to see us getting some traction. And as ever, thank you all for your interest, and do like, do subscribe, do leave a comment. It does help us here. So, Alex, let's just start with overall impressions from last night. A magnificent victory, and you've called it the best performance of the season so far. What are your big takeaways?
Yeah, so far Blues have only played in moments, haven't they? In games they've won, their first three league wins were largely due to individual moments of quality. I thought it was pretty much the perfect team performance, maybe 70 to 75 minutes last night. Blues started quite nervously. I remember seeing Alfie May when they were going to defend the second of those early Wrexham corners and just trying to tell his teammates to calm down a little bit, and lo and behold, they conceded from that corner. But once they got out their system and got into their rhythm, they were by far the better team. It was a real contrast of styles, wasn't it? Blues wanting all of the ball and trying to make things happen, whereas Wrexham didn't really engage much when Blues had the ball in front of them and were quite happy to sit back. Once Blues got that equaliser, it was a little bit fortuitous because the goalkeeper spilled a shot and Joe Stansfield was, jolly on the spot to get there and get the rebound in. But once that goal went in, it was always going to be Blues, wasn't it? They looked the better team. They were much the better team towards the end of the first half. Got two very quick goals at the start of the second half, which always helps. And even when Blues went down to 10 men for the final 5 minutes plus stoppages, they never really looked troubled. They were by far the better team, and their class really showed against Wrexham.
Yeah, indeed. I think my big takeaway was those 75 minutes, and it was Blues camped outside the Wrexham box. And yes, you can say that was by design. Wrexham were happy to sit deep and leave space for themselves to counter in. But just the sight of Bielik and Clara, 30 yards from the opposition goal, picking passes, and the dominance that Iwata and Peck had on midfield. I've not seen Blues play with a dead mouse of a team. That's probably slightly disrespectful. It was a very disrespectful thing to say about Wrexham. They certainly weren't a dead mouse, but they were relatively passive in their press and their positioning, and it was very much a low block. To see Blues do that to another team is something that you haven't seen for a very long time. So yeah, that was my big takeaway. Can you tell us a little bit? You did speak to, as I said at the top of the show, to Wagner and Brady before the game. I know you've got content that will be coming out over the next couple of days, so you don't necessarily want to spoil that too much. But just give us a little bit of insight as to where they took place, how it was, how long you had with them, and just the sort of the circumstances and the general tone of those interviews, please.
Yeah, I'm not bothered about the spoilers, Brian. Our listeners deserve it all. So it was very similar to last year, actually. So if people remember, before the Leeds game in August, Brady and Wagner both kind of did joint interviews around the side of the pitch beforehand. That night it was after the game, because obviously it was a 3 p.m. kickoff. This time, with it being 8 p.m, it was beforehand. So again, it was like selected media were kind of allowed in allowed round the pitch a little bit early, so we stood there from maybe 5:30ish. And I think my interview was maybe about 6:10 by the end of it because of the slight delay. So they spoke to Sky, Blues TV, BBC, WM, us, I think TalkSport as well, and it was just to get a flavour of kind of what's been going on behind the scenes over the summer spending. Obviously, the usual topics are all up for discussion. Asked a little bit about the new stadium to try and get an update there. Clearly, still at the forefront of Tom Wagner's thinking, and Tom Brady, his involvement has mainly been based around the recovery side, hasn't it? From going down to the training ground and going into the treatment room, they've revamped. You can kind of see all the TBRX branding basically everywhere in that room. There's a couple of Tom Brady quotes on the wall. There's Tom Brady quotes in the tunnel wall at the stadium as well. So, he was actually quite insightful on that aspect of it. It's clearly something that's been key to him in getting him to play into his mid-40s at the highest level in his particular sport, and something that he believes he and his body coach Alex Guerrero, who is also heavily involved at Blues, believe that can be translated over to our football. So yeah, it was interesting to get his thoughts. Two quite engaging interviews, very engaging characters, and yeah, they spoke very well again.
Do you get the impression that Brady has a Scooby of anything to do with Blues? Is he actively interested?
I think he is. It's you don't know how true it is, but Chris Davies does say that he speaks to Tom Brady quite regularly, particularly about the recovery aspect. And Blues have changed a lot of what they do in recovery this season. In terms of the day after a game now is way more important than it's ever been. In years gone by, the day after a game would probably be a day off or maybe a very, very light thing. Now they're recovering, they're doing all of that aspects, and it's intense. It's just another training day for them. There aren't really many days off now, or any at all. And it's all about, Brady says, making sure that when it comes to the end of the season, where players are normally fatigued and tired and really, really running the risk of injury, that Blues are actually going to be stronger and better than their rivals and not picking up the injuries that they have maybe in years gone by. So he spoke really well on the subject. I don't know how interested Tom Brady would have been in football before he obviously joined the Blues bandwagon. But we can only say it as we see it, can't we? And he celebrates the goals like the rest of us.
Yeah, and the scraps as well.
Yeah.
We'll come to that in a minute, because that was quite a telling incident towards sort of the end of the game when Krystian Bielik and James McLean got involved. But yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute, as I say. I want to talk to you about the interviews after the game. Chris Davies was obviously really very pleased, wasn't he? Describing it as I think the best performance of the season, it's been pretty obvious that it is to anyone who watches Blues regularly.
Yeah, he did. Are we going to come on to Phil Parkinson as well? Because there were two contrasting.
We are indeed. Yes, okay. We are. Yeah.
Okay, that's probably slightly more juicy, isn't it, for us? Yeah, Chris Davies, as you would expect, very happy with his team. Happy with the goal scorers, in particular, Stansfield getting 2. That's kind of, I wouldn't say weight off his shoulders, because from speaking to Stansfield last night as well, he basically said, it's not my fault that the club paid that money for me. It's nothing to do with me. I'm just going to play my own football and use the talk as fuel to play better. Also very happy with Iwata. We were both quite impressed with Iwata against Warsaw, particularly when Peck came on in the second half and they played together. I was slightly surprised that he started so soon ahead of Leonard in the league game, but he justified his selection. He was fantastic. Not only the goal was a great strike, but the way he worked in front of the Blues back four, the way he retrieved possession. He's so combative in midfield, probably the most combative midfield the Blues have got. And he was just outstanding. He really ran Stansfield close, man of the match, slightly off it in my book, because Stansfield scored twice and was so influential, but Iwata was fantastic, as was Peck. Really, other than, Chris Davies being very happy with his team's performance. There wasn't much to report from his press conference.
Yeah, we'll pick your player ratings apart in a minute, actually. So we'll come to that, definitely. So obviously Phil Parkinson, tell us what Phil Parkinson said, and then we'll give our thoughts on it.
I haven't got the quote to hand, but I think it'd probably be quite good to read it out, wouldn't it?
I have. I've got it on the running order here. So shall I read it? Birmingham have had an extraordinary opportunity this summer with the resources they have. Every player we were going for, they were going for them and outbidding us or offering more wages. It was almost let them sign whoever they want, and everyone else will look out for what else is out there. So, yeah, to me, it feels like Phil Parkinson has gone from being the big financial fish in the National League and in League Two. And, let's be honest, they're a pretty big financial fish in League One as well, aren't they? They're certainly not bottom of the league budget. And then a bigger fish has come along and gobbled them up. So can you have it both ways? I suppose, you can have it both ways, can't you? You can. I'm sure Phil Parkinson would have been saying in the National League and League Two that, it's all, yes, resources are good, but it doesn't guarantee anything. And then, it does feel like the boot's been put onto the other foot a little bit here. Do you agree?
Yeah, I actually found it a little bit rich, to be honest. You look at the National League and the finances that Wrexham had. They had way more money to spend than pretty much all of their rivals, maybe bar Stockport. Again, very similar story in League Two. They had a budget that dwarfed all the clubs in that league, again, apart from one or two. The other two teams that came up in Stockport and Mansfield, they've had a very good budget this summer, like you say, Brian. So I find it hard to kind of listen to somebody in that position kind of talking about another club's money or better financial resources, because, they've had it for 2 years, haven't they? Well, maybe more. And they're not exactly, the paupers of League One, are they? Let's be honest. So
they're not. So, and now, having said that, we are both on a bound that Blues are in the Championship or the Premier League, that we cannot play they've got the bigger budget card.
No, you can't. But I mean, there are always going to be clubs in this country, whatever league you're in, when you get to the Premier League and whatever, that are always going to have more money than you. Every team that's kind of tried to battle the established Big Six in the Premier League over the last 5 years has kind of hit a ceiling, haven't they? And they haven't been able to do it because there is such a gap, because those clubs have been in that in the Champions League and what have you for so long. So, I'd be happy with Blues in the Premier League, to be honest. I'm not going to be moaning when clubs are spending more, but when clubs are spending £60 million on players and Blues are only spending 30.
Yeah, it is a first world problem, isn't it? Absolutely. Yeah. I wonder if it was just a little bit of mudging of the waters and, smoke and mirrors to detract from the fact that his team had been they'd been soundly beaten. They weren't pretty soundly beaten. They were soundly beaten, weren't they?
Yeah, definitely. Before the game, I was actually looking at the Wrexham team, and I know a lot of the players, because several of them have obviously played in the Championship and higher in some cases, knew their system beforehand, and I was very impressed by their midfield. George Dobson, Ollie Rathbone, and Elliot Lee, all good players in their own right. To go to Rotherham in the summer and take their captain, another League One club, was quite impressive with Rathbone. And I do expect Wrexham to be up there. I just don't think they're not in the calibre of Blues. And, the quote that he gave about every player that we were interested in, Blues were able to go and sign because they had, could outbid us and pay more money in wages. Which Blues players were Wrexham interested in? Maybe Mark Leonard? I was genuinely, they weren't going scouting Holland and trying to sign Willem Williamson, were they?
I don't know the answer to that, but certainly Leonard was the one that was sort of linked between the two clubs in the press. Yeah. I wonder if they asked a question about Alfie May. I have to say I wasn't following their recruitment that closely, but yeah, let's not have too much hubris. Half of that Wrexham team did start with them in the National League. And yes, you can say that doesn't make them National League players. That makes them Football League players who were recruited through the largesse of Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. I can never say this guy's name. What's his name?
I think it's McElhenney, isn't it?
Rob McElhenney. They were Football League players playing in the National League due to their wealth. So, but to be fair, they also have come through for the last couple of divisions as well. So, yeah, hopefully there'll be a day when Blues are in a division when they are getting summarily outbid for some of their targets. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the fight. Can we call it a fight? It was more handbags,
melee,
wasn't it? Yeah, the melee. Yeah,
Davis call it nonsense.
Nonsense. Okay, that's interesting because I went on News Now to obviously look at the stories that had come out from the game last night, and one of the sites had done a pull quote of nonsense. Chris Davis speaks out on the confrontation last night, and I was desperately trying to, without clicking on it, I was trying to think, in what context does he use nonsense? And you've just confirmed it for me there. That was the context. So save himself a click. Not that I would encourage anyone to do that, obviously. What did you make of it? It kind of boiled out of nothing, didn't it? Really. It was a tightish. There was a bit of edge to this contest, but then it just sort of mushroomed up from nowhere, didn't it?
Did it come? I think it came from. Was it the clash between Mullen and Cochrane?
Mullen and Cochrane, yeah.
And Mullen, the video replay showed that he almost. He appeared to think about taking a little bite of his leg. And Mullen, I actually found his tweet quite funny, actually saying, I know what this looks like, but it's actually his leg that was trying to attack my mouth. So yeah, but
very Luis Suarez.
Yeah, literally. He obviously saw the cameras and thought better of it. But yeah, it kind of came out of nothing. It came from that. Bielik obviously flew in to protect his teammate, defend his teammate, and then it just all kind of really kicked off, didn't it? Because then Wrexham captain James McLean came and got involved, and there really was no calming him down. So yeah, it kind of got heated between Bielik and McLean, and you know what? McLean's hands were probably raised a little bit. I thought.
Did he make contact with Mark Leonard's face?
Yeah, and Bielik, I think, and Bielik didn't go down, and Leonard didn't go down, and that probably helped McLean.
Yeah.
I thought I half expected a red card to be shown at that point, to be honest, and he definitely would have got himself sent off had Phil Parkinson not taken him off. Unfortunately for Blues, Bielik did get himself sent off with a challenge on Cannon a little bit later on. It's an avoidable red card, to be honest. That's the big frustration for me taken away from this game, because Blues go to Wrexham. I'm combining Rotherham and Wrexham there. Go to Rotherham on Saturday, and Bielik is a player you desperately want in your 11 for that game, isn't it? It's going to be an aerial bombardment. Steve Evans makes no bones about Rotherham being a direct team. They'll launch it into the box at every opportunity, and Blues aren't the biggest team. They have 3 or 4 sizable players, and Krystian Bielik is one of them, and alongside Clara, the best aerially. So he'll be a big miss. Yeah. And if it is probably going to be Ben Davies, he needs to have a very good game.
Who's the chief culprit here? Is it Bielik for the silly tackle, or should Davies have headed him off and substituted him?
You don't substitute a centre back, do you, Brian? I don't think. Not normally.
Or your captain?
Yeah, I think Bielik's to blame, to be honest. I think he probably should have known. He made a foul that most players would make in that position. It wasn't a great challenge, to be honest. It's a bit of a scissor, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, you can have no complaints, really. And I suppose for his part in that melee, he was always going to get booked when 5 players were booked. So, no blame with the referee. I think it was a red card, but Bielik probably should have avoided getting involved in the first place. And then he probably, to such an extent in the first place, I understand him wanting to protect his teammates, but he didn't really need to get so involved. And there was obviously a lot of afters afterwards with McLean. And then avoid the challenge.
Just on that, I can't claim this quote as my own, but I think somebody said it on Twitter. It smelled like team spirit. Great song, great band. And I got a little bit nerdy about it. That's why I was late turning up here today. Was I was watching the incident with a very small eye over and over and over again. Not just because Tom Brady appeared to enjoy his team's response, but I just wanted to see exactly how many Blues players got involved, and all of the out players, all 10 of the outfield players were involved there. And star of the melee for me was Iwata, because he came in there and he absolutely peeled McLean off somebody. So yeah, Thor was there. Thor was probably having more of a watching brief, to be fair. Leonard did well not to overreact and really sort of inflame the situation. But yeah, Bielik was there, and Clara just gave Cleworth a little bit of a knowing word just at the end as it all calmed down there as well. So yeah, I like that. Tom Brady clearly liked it, and it's just good to see Blues players backing each other up. If they can do it without picking up yellow cards left, right, and centre, that would also be good. Yeah, so I've put Peacock. Do we need to talk about Peacock Farrell on the running order? I think one of the questions is about that as well. So I think we'll just go into the questions that we asked for last night, and there've been tons. So that's really good. Thank you everybody for that. Just sort of, this is sort of the segue into that. I put a discussion about Jay Stansfield and Alfie May and their respective positions onto the running order. And Maria Collins asked, she said she wanted to get our thoughts on the positioning of both Alfie and Jay. Both were superb and need to play and work much better together tonight, as in last night, than against Walsall. Do you think this is the ideal formation? So what are your thoughts about the May and Stansfield partnership, relationship, symbiosis, however you want to call it?
Do you remember back in 2009 when Real Madrid signed all those players, Ronaldo, Kaká, Benzema, and they were left with trying to fit them into one system. And at the time, I think Ronaldo and Kaká were probably two of the three best players in the world, weren't they? And you always kind of knew that one of them would have to take a back seat. And it was Kaká who did, and his career eventually kind of fell off a cliff, didn't it? But Ronaldo obviously went from strength to strength because he was the main man. And it felt a little bit like Stansfield kind of took centre stage, and he will take centre stage, I think, as the striker. He again started there, and that's clearly where Chris Davies wants him and where he is going to play. And Alfie May is probably going to have to fit in around him at this stage, I think. Whether that's going to be detrimental to May's overall performance, I'm not sure. I think it will be detrimental to his goals tally because Stansfield was taking up those positions that May would have been in last night and scored 2 goals from it. But Stansfield's the guy who scored 13 goals in the Championship for Blues last season. He's the guy who's going to get them to the Premier League, isn't he? So I don't blame Chris Davies for going down this route. I just hope that it isn't too detrimental to May's performance this season and he can still play a key role because he has been excellent for Blues at the start of the season and he's clearly been taken to the hearts of the fans. Yeah,
I think that is a big point of this issue is May has charmed the birds from the trees, hasn't he, in his first 2 or 3 months with Blues. Both in his dealing with the media and his demeanour on the pitch and his interaction with the fans at games as well. I do feel for him a little bit. I wonder when he signed, if he was said, you do know we're going for Jay Stansfield and we'll play him as the number 9, don't you? I wonder if that conversation was had. I mean, you're absolutely right. Stansfield has not been signed to do anything other than play a ton of games. And we can't do anything other than take Chris Davies at his word and his deed. Chris Davies said that he saw him as the 9, as the central focal point. And in the 2 games that Stansfield's been back at the club, he's played him exactly there, and Alfie May's had to suck it up a little bit, hasn't he? I do think May was better against Wrexham than he was against Walsall. I thought he looked, really quite out of sorts against Walsall, and it was maybe it's me being anxious, but you just want to know that they're friends, and that one nose hasn't been put out of joint too much. And I was slightly gratified to see May involved, go over to Stansfield for the Stansfield second goal. He gave him a smile and a bit of a hug, and I thought, as I say, I was slightly relieved with that because I like everybody to get on.
Yeah.
If one of them wants to go on social media and declare their undying love and their best friendship, then I'm all for that as well.
Brian, spoiler alert, one of them has. So speaking to Stansfield after the game, he was quite keen to talk about the relationship with Alfie May, and basically said a lot of talk has gone around about who's going to have that position, and we'll both fight for it. At the end of the day, we're both players for this football club. Me and Alfie have a really good connection in the changing room, and we can help each other through. So I think that kind of, says they do get on, and they're both obviously in it for the same reason, aren't they, to get Blues promoted. So I don't think there's going to be any issue there. I think May's probably just going to have to accept that it's not going to be all about him as it was in the first 4 games. And to be fair, Alfie May seems a good character. He seems like someone who will. But then again, he's probably going to be slightly disappointed because we know that he set himself some quite ambitious targets at the start of the season. We'll want to be the League One top scorer. So you never know. Blues are going to create a lot of chances this season, score a lot of goals. There are going to be games, hopefully, where there are 4 or 5 goals that Blues score and they can share them around and May can get his fair share. So who says he won't be top scorer? But it looks like, for now at least, that he is going to be playing in a slightly different role, a deeper role.
Yeah, and I thought the role was slightly different and slightly slightly tweaked to the way it was against Walsall, and I thought May looked a little bit more comfortable in that role. And certainly, the fact that he got the shot off for Stansfield's first goal, that does bode well. So, yeah, interesting, that one. Let's lead us on to a take from Turner 42671. I don't think that's his real name. Peck and Tomoki is the best midfield double act in the Championship, let alone Division 1. I mean, they were absolutely central in every sense of the word last night, weren't they?
Yeah. I feel sorry for Mark Leonard. I genuinely, I can't believe Blues have managed to assemble this midfield pairing in League One. Iwata looks every bit Peck's equal, doesn't he? In terms of he's got similar level of quality. We know how good Peck is. We made a pact on the last podcast, a promise that we would not judge Peck against kind of our outrageous standards that we've got for him. We judge him for what he does in these matches this season, and he was exceptional again. The way he moves the ball so quickly, the positions he takes up, even the defensive work he does. I think he's such a good footballer, such an intelligent footballer, and Iwata very intelligent as well. I love how quickly Iwata moves it. It's a lot of one-touch passing. He doesn't give the opposition time to get back into position. He moves so quickly. There are a few instances of that against Walsall, particularly late on when Blues are counter-attacking and trying to win that game. And again, it was like that against Wrexham. He's a very, very good player. And, this time last year, Tomoki Iwata was playing Champions League football for Celtic. So, and I think I was listening to an interview he gave with Blues TV last week, and he said that, he wants to reach the Premier League with this club. That's all he's thinking about. So, that signing, I think we've both spoken about and been kind of given a bit of an insight of how excited Blues are about that signing. And he looks top score.
Yeah, just a point on whether it's the best partnership in the Championship. I wonder if Leeds and Ampadu and Gruyev might have something to say about that. But you'd fancy Blues 2 in the battle, wouldn't you? Just off the top of my head, who've Albion got? Albion have got Mowat and Malumbi, haven't they? Yeah, I think
I'll say Blues.
Peck can hold a candle to that. Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Just on Peck, he's just always available, isn't he?
Yeah.
You want your players at the fulcrum of your team not to hide, and Peck is always available. And I'm not a massive statistician, but I did do a little bit of research. People will be shocked to know before we came on here, and I've lost it now. Iwata played 62 passes and with a 95% completion, and a lot of them were forward as well. Peck paid 76 passes with an 85 completion rate. those are stunning figures, and they're positioning almost at the edge of the attacking third because Blues were so far pushed on. It just gave them an absolute stranglehold on the game. Just on that, while I'm throwing a Norsey stat in there, Krystian Bielik attempted 110 passes last night. I think that potentially there's been some games when Blues, the entire team, haven't done that. Good, interesting point, that one. Questions from Darren. Is Taylor Gardner-Hickman ahead of Samsted for the right back position, or is it more to do with Samsted being away with Iceland? And then we'll come on to Darren's point about your ratings. What's your reading of the right back situation? Because I was mildly surprised when I saw Gardner-Hickman on the team sheet, and pleasantly surprised by the end.
I was surprised. You made a good point about maybe Gardner-Hickman's in there for the physicality. Probably has a little bit more of that than Samsted. I think the international thing is also a very good point. Probably diluted by the fact William Williamson started, who obviously had been away with Iceland as well. But if Chris Davies did want to work with his team for a week leading up to this game, then he probably, a lot of the work does go around the defence, and we know how important that right back position in particular is because of the freedom Ethan Laird has had in the opening weeks of the season to adventure forward and basically play as a right winger a lot of the time. Gardner-Hickman played it quite similarly, to be fair. He was very high and wide, whereas against Warsaw, I think they tried to use him as a hybrid midfielder where he took in alongside the two central midfield players, and that wasn't as effective. I was really impressed with him, and I think maybe he is ahead of Samsted at this moment in time. Maybe Samsted just hasn't quite done it for whatever reason for Chris Davies yet. I'm sure he'll get a chance if Ethan Laird's going to be out for over a month. There are going to be games that Samsted is going to start. He might even Rotherham. But if it's a physicality thing, then you'd probably expect Gardner-Hickman to play that game as well because Rotherham are the most physical team in this league. But I don't think you read too much into it. It probably shows the strength and quality of Blues squad in that, Gardner-Hickman's probably the midfielder that I've ruled out of the starting contention to start because the other three are just so good. So he's obviously going to get games somehow. He's a championship midfielder in his own right, so he's probably going to play it right back a lot this season as well. Yeah,
indeed. Before the match, we were discussing who's going to provide the width in the way that Laird has traditionally done, and the answer was Gardner-Hickman, wasn't it? He played very wide and he got a lot of balls into the box. Not as many as you maybe should have done. He did hit the first defender a few times, but overall, easily his best game in the blue shirt, I would say.
Definitely.
Darren also says, I noticed that you gave Alfie the worst score, 6 out of 10 in your ratings. I actually thought you knitted a lot of the play together, says Darren, not me. He was a link between midfield and attack, and he said he should have been given a 7.5 out of 10. So while we're just on ratings, are you like me? Do you give everyone 6 just for being there, and then you go up and down from there?
Yeah, it depends what kind of impact they have on the game. I don't look at a 6 as a bad rating, to be honest. That's how I kind of feel. I think 6 is fine, 7's good, 8 and above, you've had a very decent game, haven't you? I don't think there are loads of 8s. There may be 4 or 5. Stansfield was a 9. I think players like Williamson, May, and Hansen. Williamson had more of an impact in my opinion. May and Hansen were the 2 starters who were kind of on the fringes of it for me. Hansen put a few balls into the box that really didn't come to anything. I think his quality needs to improve from that left wing position.
Yeah, agree.
May just wasn't as involved for me as the other attackers. I think that's probably a position thing and something that's going to have to be worked out over the next few weeks when this kind of teething process with Stansfield is going on. Because let's not forget, Alfie May's played as centre forward all pre-season, for the first month of the season. Now all of a sudden he's been asked to drop back into a slightly deeper role and help create for this other striker who's now going to be the centre forward and main man. It's difficult, isn't it? He's not played that role for a number of years. He's been the number 9, the main guy. So it's no slight on Alfie May. I think he's an excellent player. I just thought against Wrexham, he just wasn't the leading man, was he? He wasn't one of the main guys, the main protagonist in the attack.
For what it's worth, I actually agree with you. I might have given him the 0.5 bump for a victory. He tended to give everyone a half a point bonus if the team won, and knock off half a point if the team lost. If the team lost, just to save me getting pelters on social media. But we are splitting hairs here.
We are. I'm trying to avoid halves as well this season where I can, but it's difficult to differentiate, isn't it, between two players if you can't use a half, especially if the better player isn't your man of the match. Like I try to, if two players are good, like Williamson, I thought was all right last night. He was quite good, but was he as good as Peck? I think I gave Peck an 8, and he wasn't as good as Peck, so I gave him 7.5.
Yeah, so. Yeah, fair enough. I'm sure listeners are fascinated about talking about this score. Callum Pills has asked, thoughts on Bailey, Peacock, Farrell? Surely his time is up. Another horrible mistake, Allsop, please. We did talk about Peacock Farrell last night, didn't we? And I think I'm of the opinion that I want him to be stronger in that situation on that set piece. What are your thoughts about that?
I think he has to be. He has to be. I watched it back, and they did get bodies around him and made it difficult for him. But he's got to be stronger. He's got to get it. I'm not necessarily saying further away, but he's got to get it into a better position than 8 yards from goal to a striker who's banging for.
Get it to the side, even.
Flick it over your bar. Do whatever you've got to do. He just looks a little bit short of confidence for me. He doesn't quite ooze the same personality and character that other goalkeepers that Blues have had in recent times have. I'm thinking back to John Ruddy, who was, the loudest voice on the pitch, wasn't he? I'm not saying Peacock Farrell has to rant and rave constantly, because he doesn't. But when Allsop's in possession, he just looks very confident that his next pass is going to be a good one. And I've not quite seen that from Peacock Farrell. And we have both said if he's in the team because he's judged to be the better goalkeeper, then he can't be making goalkeeping mistakes.
Yeah, I think I'm still just in the, hold position because Blues are still winning. I think it'd be very hard now to drop him on the back of what was collectively the team's best performance. And I actually thought his distribution was pretty good last night, no?
No, it was better, I would say. It was better. And I would also add that, going to Rotherham, that's kind of the acid test for a goalkeeper, isn't it? So, Steve Evans will have watched the Peacock Farrell struggle with that corner Wrexham put in, and will basically be instructing Rotherham's long throwers and corner takers to just hurl it in his direction, won't they, and put bodies around him. And Rotherham have got enough big bodies to cause Peacock Farrell problems. So that will be a big test of his goalkeeping credentials. But no, I'm like you. I probably wouldn't be taking a goalkeeper out of the team that's winning.
Yeah, indeed. Miles McKee, hopefully I've said that right, Miles. Am I harsh to think that it wasn't an exceptional performance? 6 to 7 out of 10 for the most part. But it still feels like this squad can really take it to another level or two. I think collectively it was better than 6.5, 7 out of 10, don't you?
Yeah, I'd say 7.5, 8. Again, it goes down to what are we judging Blues against? They're a League One team. We've got to judge them against League One teams for this season at least, haven't we? We've got to judge their players, who, let's face it, are Championship players at least, against League One opposition and League One standards. And Blues were probably as good as they could be last night, to be honest, or near to as good as they could be. So it's probably an 8 in my opinion.
Given the noise around the game and the profile and the fact they went a goal down to an unbeaten, highly rated side that is very well drilled, I thought the way they dominated them for 75 minutes, I thought it was really, really good. And yes, okay, let's say it's only with a small O Wrexham and it's only with a small O League One, but to heck with it, I'm enjoying it. I don't mind. I'm quite enjoying the fact that, Blues can do that to a team rather than playing a low block and finish 17th in the Championship at the moment.
Yeah, I'm looking at this season as laying foundations as much as anything else. Can Blues build a team that can go straight into the Championship and compete, if they get there? So judging Blues against a Wrexham team who we are expecting to be in promotion contention. I don't think Wrexham will be automatic. I think they'll probably challenge for a playoff place. To beat them 3-1 and so convincingly dominate all statistics, you can't be anything but happy and impressed.
Yeah, they didn't fluff their lines on the big night, did they? BCFC Stato says, why do Blues keep conceding first half goals? 6 of our 9 goals conceded in all competitions have come in the first half. Any thoughts on that?
I think a lot of problems the goals Blues have conceded have been their own making this season. I suppose when they are set into their rhythm early into a match and playing out from the back, problems are more likely to occur than when they've really kind of got into their rhythm. We saw against Wycombe quite early on, didn't we? When Bielik was playing out, there could have been a goal conceded there. We saw it against Leyton Orient where they gave a goal away quite early on in like the 20th minute or something. So that's when the errors are happening. And then Blues obviously have got the firepower and quality to recover from that, which is a good thing. Interestingly, I think we might have mentioned on the last podcast, the Blues are kind of underperforming against their XG in terms of goals conceded, because I think before last night according to XG, they should have conceded 2, but they conceded 4, and now it's obviously now 5. So that suggests a team that's kind of creating its own problems and making errors, and hopefully they'll be ironed out in the next few weeks, months.
And I wonder if that imbalance is also due to the fact that Blues opponents do less attacking in the second half, don't they? Because you've got this Chris Davis thing where they work the legs out of teams, and inevitably Blues are finishing the stronger of the two teams. Interesting thought though. Thanks for that one, BCFC Stato. At Colin Tatum is going to pose as a question that he's probably better placed to answer than we are. Thanks for getting in touch, Tats. Hopefully see you on here again soon. How have Blues gone from a low block 8.5% possession per game to a carouselling 93.4% possession game? I think he admits that he's probably gilded that lily a little bit. He says it's easier to implement with a summer of preparation and an overhaul, and at this level with better players. And then he also says it's fascinating how fans have been so patient with it too. Thoughts on that? Is it just down to the fact that Blues have got better players than anyone else in League One?
I think so. And I think the key has been recruitment. I was told that the summer of 2023, they were designed or supposed to recruit players to play this kind of style of football, possession-based. It obviously didn't quite go to plan, but it feels like the recruitment this year has been far more focused on that. And they've signed players that really suit the system and suit Chris Davies. Obviously, Chris Davies had a real hand in who they've signed as well. Yeah. I'm not massively surprised, to be honest. You saw kind of the start of it in pre-season with how Blues were playing. And it's new players, isn't it? I think a lot of the players last season weren't designed to play this way or weren't suited to it and hadn't been taught it properly. Yeah. These players are very comfortable in it, and I'm not surprised it's been so fast. I think it's great that Blues can do this in League One now, as stupid as that sounds, because it gives them kind of that platform to then go into the Championship and hit the ground running straight away. And they will, they have the potential, provided they recruit right next summer, to go and do in Ipswich Town or be an Ipswich Town that can compete at the first time of asking. Just looking at that, if you look at Awata and Peck, and we've waxed lyrical about them enough, but if you look at Ipswich's midfield of Morsey and Luongo, they're not that dissimilar in style as a team on midfield. I would just say Awata and Peck have got more quality between them.
Yeah, I'd say that as well, definitely. I was stunned when I looked at the way Ipswich were playing with Luongo and Morsey, because they're two very sort of workaday, workman-like Championship midfielders, and Kieran McKenna had got them playing so well. I've got to say, I think the level is a big factor in this. Actually, before I come on to that, I think this has been in Blues' mind for a few years, certainly since Craig Gardner's been the technical director. I remember sitting with Gardner and Pep Clotet when Gardner was man-marking Pep Clotet in an interview that I was doing with him in a hotel in Portugal. And Gardner was very vociferous, saying that you can't get promoted with 4-4-2. You can't play direct. To get out of this league, you have to play football and play through the thirds. So that had been in his thinking, way back when. We're talking 5 years ago now. I don't think he was actually even technical director by that stage, but he was clearly. I think he was on the coaching side by that point. So the transition of style has been on Blues' radar for a while. They've had some coaches have tried to do it. Karanka came in and with the promise that maybe there'd be playing better football. Some of the football that Clotet's team played with Villalba and Dan Crowley was actually very, very good.
From Bellingham.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I wonder what happened to him. And Tony Mowbray came in and tried to do it as well. Obviously, the big mistake, and I think Colin alludes to that in his comment, trying to do it on the hoof mid-season, is so much more difficult than doing it in the summer. So, yeah, all those factors are relevant to me. It's the fact that the recruitment's been done to it. It's been designed to play this style. The fact that the players are better. We've just talked about Peke Iwata being, a higher standard than Blues have had for a long, long time in the central midfield. It's about having someone like Bielik who can play those passes from defence as well. It's been a long time since Blues have had a defender so accomplished in distribution. And do you know what? I wonder if they would be. I think they'd find it very hard, even with all those players, to make this transition at championship level, because the quality of the opponent would just be that much better.
You get punished more, Brian. I was mentioning the errors that Blues have made earlier. You wouldn't be getting away with those errors.
No, exactly.
In the championship, definitely not.
No, indeed. Interesting point. And you are right. The fans have been really, really good with it. So yeah, that's a good comment there, Cat Tats. Thanks for that. Ben Mountford, asks, are we likely to see Sanderson back in contention? Obviously, Bielik being suspended for one game after 2 yellow cards.
I wouldn't think so, no. The impression I got from Chris Davies on Friday of last week was that Sanderson's still a little way off with a foot issue. So I wouldn't expect to see Sanderson. I know he's been in the treatment room with Buchanan and Chang. So probably not. I think Ben Davies is your man.
Sandy Cal 999 asked, did anyone feel sorry for Alfie May being substituted? I understand it was for the greater good, but he was therefore unable to get historic 5th goal in the first 5 league games. I bet Alfie May felt sorry for himself. But no, it's Chris Davies is going to make substitutions however he sees them, isn't he? And for me, the important fact was that Blues went on and won the game. I wonder if Sandy's implicit in Sandy's question is the fact that Alfie is now so popular with supporters.
Maybe, yeah. And you look at the guy who came on for him, Lyndon Dykes, who's getting 20 minutes at the end of a League One game, having played more championship minutes and scored more championship goals than May and Stansfield combined. So I don't, Chris Davies won't look at things emotionally or look at records like that. He'll just make subs as and when he sees them only. So, it would have been nice for May to get that 5th goal in 5th league game, but, I don't think that's on Chris Davies' radar. Yeah,
it's not on the list of 100 priorities. It's probably 103 or something like that, isn't it? Yeah. Mickey H has asked, has that performance settled your nerves? I don't know who's been more nervous, you or me.
Me, because I've been saying when.
Very true. Yeah. Okay. So it's me that's been the doubting Thomas. It has then. Yeah, I would say it has. It's nice to see all the sort of component parts coming together and producing a cohesive and dominant performance. Yeah, it has settled my nerves. That's not to say. In fact, Mickey goes on to say that that doesn't mean that every game's going to be like that, and Blues are going to be playing as advanced against teams so camped in. But yeah, it has settled my nerves. Difficult to see Blues being beaten. We'll go back to it with Iwata and Peck at the centre of the park and Jay Stansfield, gobbling up chances.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be a scaremonger now, but I suppose the Rotherham game looks to me like one that I'm not particularly relishing. I feel like Blues owe Rotherham one after their performance against them last season, but at the same time, Rotherham are going to be absolutely horrible to play against, aren't they? And, Peck and Iwata might not be able to have much of an impact on the game if the ball just keeps going over their heads. So, I think Rotherham's going to be a huge test, particularly without Krystian Bielik. But over the course of a season, I'm very confident Birmingham City are going to get promoted. I think there'll be 3 or 4 defeats in there. Could be a few more, but there'll be enough points to go up. And it's just whether it's going to be automatic, win the league, whatever playoffs. I don't know, but I think Blues will go up.
I think journalistically, you should be looking forward to Rotherham because Steve Evans will say something
Real Birmingham.
profoundly reportable. Exactly, Real Birmingham, yeah. And also, the press room is right next to the changing room, so as it does kick off, you can really hear what's going on. And it makes it quite difficult for the managers to come in and say, no, everything's fine, we're all happy. So, yeah, I know what you mean. I suppose it's just a classic case of League One being 23 different kinds of battles against, or 23, 45, 46 different battles against 23 other opponents, isn't it? In that Rotherham will present something very different to what Wrexham did. So, yeah, it will be tough. But you'd expect on Mickey, obviously, you'd expect on the balance of finance and quality that Blues will still pick their way through it. Davies' dugout. I know people will disagree with this, and it's very much splitting hairs on last night's performance. Do you think Peck is undroppable because of the reassurance he was made to make it, the reassurance that were given him to make him stay in the summer? Personally, I think Leonard qualifies as more suited to League One. That's an interesting debate, that is.
Yeah, I think Peck's probably undroppable because he's the most talented, or one of the top 3 most talented players in the Blue squad, to be honest.
Undroppable? I mean, no one's undroppable.
No. I think Bielik's the only one who's undroppable for me. I think if Bielik's fit, I think he plays. I'm pretty sure on that. The Blues are good enough. They've got good enough depth for Peck to be on the bench occasionally. Leonard and Iwata's not a bad League One midfield. Iwata and Taylor Gardner-Hickman's not a bad League One midfield. So, or Leonard or Taylor Gardner-Hickman, whatever. But yeah, Peck will be on the bench at times this season. I'd imagine. The rotation will guarantee that. But I think when Blues are playing the big games, like Wrexham at home, Peck will play because he's an exceptional footballer at this level.
I think if the implication is that Peck stayed because he's been told he's going to play 60 times this season,
no,
I just don't see Davis signing up to that, to be honest.
No, definitely not. Peck's too good a character for that as well. He would never expect that.
Yeah. If you ask a manager to do that, you are automatically eroding their authority, aren't you, in the dressing room? And once that crack appears, it never really goes away. So I understand the point, Davies dugout, but I think Peck, as Alex said, Peck is there because he's one of the best players. But it will be interesting to see how much football Mark Leonard does get and what impact he has, because he was highly sought after and he came to Blues for the project. We all know that. And what maybe that's a shorthand for. But Mark Leonard was one of the better central midfielders in League One last season.
Yeah, I do, Brian. I do feel like a couple of these players probably didn't expect the players that would follow them into Birmingham City. Like, I don't think Alfie May expected Linda Dykes and Jay Stansfield to come along. I don't think Mark Leonard expected Taylor Gardner-Hickman, maybe, but I don't think he expected Tomoki Iwata to follow him through the door. So they've probably just been a little bit unfortunate. The Blues have had such spending power, and United clearly wanted to do it all in one window.
Just as an aside to that, was Yokoyama even on the bench last night? He wasn't, was he?
No, and that was tactical. That was just a selection thing.
Right, so why?
The squad is that deep and that strong that, he's not getting on the bench.
So Keshi Anderson and Scott Wright were the substitute wingers, weren't they? So, I mean, the embarrassment of riches is quite something. Which brings us on to the final word from Jobs to Dave. He said, I haven't got a take or a question, just proud. And that's a really nice note to go out on, because I think everyone was proud, not just of the performance, but of the club and the fans and the spectacle last night, weren't they?
Yeah, it was. I actually put this in my analysis piece. I feel like if you wanted a game to sell Birmingham City to America, if that's what United want to do, I feel like that was the perfect product, wasn't it? Not only what we saw on the field, but also what we saw in the stands. The rendition of "Keep Right On" a couple of minutes before the players came out was absolutely spine-tingling, and then the atmosphere during the game when the goals went in, the roar from the crowd, even after the game when Sky were obviously taking their cameras around and the players were going to celebrate with the Tilton and so forth, was absolutely brilliant. It felt like one of those occasions that it was just an absolute pleasure to be a part of, didn't it? It was just fun. And And it was one of those where you get home and you get home at 12 o'clock and you just want to carry on working because you want to keep writing about it and you're happy to. Whereas, there were times last season when Blues would go to Rotherham at 0-0 and I'd be just kind of racing to get things done, just writing and thinking, oh God, I want this to be over. But it was an absolute pleasure and a joy to be part of.
Yeah, indeed. I'm sure there will be opportunities for you this season, Alex, to have some cloud with your silver lining. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Alex, for your time, and thank you, everybody, for listening in. And keep right on from both of us.